Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Dad's Perspective Podcast, episode 6. We are over the hump. Whatever the hump is, I'm calling it 5 for some reason. The hump is 5. How you doing, Story?
Yeah, tired.
Yeah?
And feeling a bit ill, but other than that,
Tired and ill,
Gucci.
but you're still here. You're still a dad. Right? Get used to it. Can you ever get used to it, like being a dad, or does it just change? Always.
I mean, you get used to it. I mean, like, I struggled in the beginning, especially like when I'd get sick when I was on my own.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I just want to lay here, like, kid, no. But kind of after a while, you just realize you don't get a break. Like, if you're single, there is no break. Sick, pneumonia, death, the plague, no breaks, and you just kind of get used to it.
Yeah.
You push through. Yeah.
It's good though, man, because ultimately that means you can push through. Because a lot of times I think where people fail is they don't have that reason, right? Like I can't think of a better and more powerful force that will drive you forward than having a kid, right? Like this little guy right here, he's just a watery little bag of mush who smiles a lot, right? He smiles all the time, and he only cries when something's wrong, right? But ultimately, it's just like, that's fun to look at, but I didn't think I'd get so much purpose from him, you know? Because ultimately, I was like, well, while he's a baby, he's definitely the mom's problem. And I use that real loosely. I love that son of a bitch. He's so awesome. He smiles so much, Story. And just, he looks at me, he brightens up his whole freaking face, and then he grabs his sock and he rips it off. And I'm like, I don't know if that sock is like a threat, or if it's like an intimidation factor, or if he's just proud of the fact that he just recently started grabbing his toes, man. Yeah. And it's cool. It's so cool watching him like grow and all that. But ultimately for me, the back to the purpose thing, like I find myself, because we got mental health here. We have struggles that come and go depending on scenarios and situations. But during those darker, rougher times, right, like I find myself stronger than I have been in the last like 2.5 years, right? In a moment where just 6 to 8 months ago, I would have just shut off the phone, shut off the lights, maybe put on something on TV, and I would have just been depressed because that's, a different story for a different time. But I would go into those dark places, and there wasn't really anything outside of time that could make me give a shit. By lack of any better explanation. And that doesn't really happen anymore. There's still struggles. There's still issues that come up. But it's almost that like push comes to shove. Like you don't have a choice, man. You can't just turn off the lights. Kid needs the lights on. Mom and kid need the lights on. And like you did it single. Like I'm doing it with support. And I still like... that necessity to help, the necessity to provide and care for, it's like a carnal freaking fuel source, man. Like I have to keep him fed, hot, and safe. I have to. Yeah. There's no other options to take care of this kid besides that. And if I have the ability to do it, I'm going to do it. And that actually makes me wonder, like, I feel that strongly. You clearly do too, but the difference being is you right now, unfortunately, don't get to express any of that desire. You still want to take care of your kid, do all of that, but like, how do you manage? Like, what do you do with all that drive and energy when she is with her mom?
When there is a difference. I'm going to clarify this for everybody out there. Having a child is not our prescription of getting over depression.
No, God, no. No.
But
it'd be way easier without depression, let me tell you.
When I had her pretty much full time, it was a lot. And I look forward to just having those few days, just for me, and then
days without her for you, you mean?
Yeah, without her, it was. Break. I was cool. I got a small break, decompress. And then as she got older, I was I don't want that. I love her being here. And then when she would leave, the first day, I'm thank God. I'm just lazy. I'm in my bed all day. I don't do anything. I'm checked out. And then the second day, I'm okay, I miss her. I want her home. And now, with everything going on, it's difficult. And I've definitely noticed a shift because when I have her, it's a big like I can't be sad, I can't be depressed, like I can't deal with my anxiety, like I can't let her see me being like down in the dumps, like I gotta pick me up and like we get to talk and like we have fun together and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And then when she leaves, like I know like the first day I'm good, and then after that it's just kind of like I slowly kind of go downhill again, just being in
Really?
like my funk. And
Do
like I
you
game and I'll clean, but it's hard. Like I mean,
What
I have
about
my
her
moments.
being there? Do you think is there something you notice is missing? Like that I know that's a really ethereal question, but like
I
when
mean,
she's gone, what about you makes you just be
it's
like, "Oh god, I just wish she was here."
I think it's just because like she's in a sense of like ex general like our daughter, because I don't really want to say my daughter because like
Yeah.
that sounds selfish, but like she's our daughter and I love having her here. Like we
Yeah.
have fun and we talk, and she's someone that I can talk to in person, and she drives me crazy sometimes, but I'm like, like that's still my kid. Like, help make her and take care of her, and we have fun, and we do like little tea parties where we play games together
Oh,
or we read
man.
books or whatever. So for me, like it's having her here and being able to talk to her, like see her
Yeah.
grow up and like learn things together. And she asks me questions, and it's fun. Sometimes aggravating, but like just being able to share things with her, and like I know we were just talking about the whole X-Men thing. Like, I
Yeah.
can't wait because she loves cartoons, and I'm like I'm hoping she'll like this because if I show her the video and because like I ask her sometimes, I'm like, do you think you'll like this? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to show her like
Yeah.
Palmon because she likes Pokemon. I'm like, well, I don't really
Mm.
play Pokemon anymore. Palmon's close. So I'm like, is this something you would like? And like she was super into the
Palmon.
trailer.
You talking about Pal
And
World?
Palmon, but
Is that
yeah,
what
Pal
everyone's calling
World.
it
But
now? Okay.
no,
It's a
I just
video
call them
game.
Palmon because you can't, obviously call them the
Pokemon.
other
Yeah,
word. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So I just,
yeah.
so she enjoys it
Palmon.
and we
I
have
like it.
fun and we play together, and she's like, "Oh, Dad, can I get this?" She's like, "I want that." So like I'm running around capturing, but like it's just having that connection to like something she's into, and I just love it. And when she's not here, like I miss her and stuff, and
Yeah.
it helps take my mind out of stuff as well, because it's like you have to, for your kid, you have to deal with your problems. Like
True.
you can't be in a slump. You can't be dealing with like having a panic attack. And you're like, oh my god, like I'm dying. Like I just want to lay in my bed. And it's like, no, you don't get to do that. Like you
Hmm.
can't show your kid, weakness. Like you got to be strong for your kid. And
That's
there's some
so
days it's tough, but you
well,
know,
and that's where it's all the more impressive of the pushing through, because speaking to it's this almost completely internalized resolve, right? Is having a kid. Like you've had dogs, you've had relationships, you've had marriages and everything in between, right? Family members.
well,
Um,
not marriages, but
well,
close.
marriage, right? One.
No,
Wait, I thought you guys were married. No? Just
no,
kid
we were
together?
engaged. Yeah.
Oh, I just assumed I've always heard you say engaged. I just
Yeah.
always assumed that
No.
you were married
No,
afterwards.
she is the first person in my entire life that I was like, you know what? I never want to get
Wow.
married, never want to have a kid,
Yeah.
and that kind of changed it. And I wanted to, but obviously it
Wow.
didn't work out, and but yeah.
Wow, talk about a blessing. Not to sidetrack completely, but like,
No.
dude, like it's this crazy without being married. Imagine if y'all were also dealing with that fallout of a divorce on
Yeah.
top of the child.
I mean,
Um,
like, it sounds terrible because of all the stuff that we go through, but like, you look at the big picture, like she wasn't always like this. Like
True, and
I
you
tell
say that a
everybody
lot.
who sees it, and I'm just like, look, I'm like, I know there's a lot of bad. She shows a lot of bad. I don't know what the problem is, and like even my TikToks, like I said, like like I came out with like the fallout from the comment, and like it just continued, and like commenting on certain things. Um, and stuff. And it's kind of like, look, you guys see the bad. Like you didn't get to see the good. You didn't get to see the joy, like how much we loved each other. And they can sit here and she can say like, I was young, I never really loved you, I just wanted attention, stuff like that. But like when you are there in the moment, it's like, look, you can say that like you never really loved me and everything else. I'm like, but that's something like you don't fake that. Like that's not something you fake. Like that's
Yeah.
genuine, like caring about someone, and like it is what it is. And like for me, like, yeah, it was terrible and we had a falling out, and ever since then, like we just can't make it work. And I don't know
Hmm.
if she's still hurting and she just can't like deal with it, or she hates my guts and like just wishes death upon me and just can't cope, whatever it may be. But like I still like I cherish the moments we had, the memories, like we had a kid together, like we had fun, we loved each other. Like my life is better when we were together, and like
Yeah.
she showed me things that I can do, and like, like it takes work, and yeah, there's an age difference, and shit happens. And I'm not gonna say like, she's a totally different person now, and as she gets older, maybe things will change. Maybe at one point she'll get the help she needs. Maybe something will click and she'll get over whatever is dealing with it. But a big thing that I try to iterate in TikTok is like, if you don't talk to the other person, you can't fix whatever may be broken. So
Yes.
if you separate and you're angry and you're hating on each other, like at some point you need to be the adult and just sit down and be like, hey, why are we like this? Like, can we come to some kind of compromise where we can co-parent and not constantly hate each other and
Yeah.
be yelling and fighting and it's just, and I can't fix what I don't know, because I don't know what the problem is. So for me, I just get to sit here and just be like the bad guy and the terrible father and the deadbeat and I hate you and the
But you're
monster.
not
And it's just
those.
like, what can I do? I can't fix what I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and that's where the focusing on the things that you have control over and honestly are the biggest priority, which is Emma and your personal health and happiness. I mean, because ultimately, if you're in the middle of a battlefield, you can never question why you're getting shot at. Because ultimately, it's kind of the nature of being in a terrible situation. Even if you understand why, which the battlefield would make a little sense, not like you got teleported, like, who am I fighting? But in your scenario, it's like there was a rivalry that was formed from love, like Hatfield and McCoy's, right? Like those, are you familiar with that one? It's a very famous American rivalry.
And they used to be friends, and then they had a falling out over something,
Huge
and now they
falling
just like
out.
hate each other.
No, literally murdered each other. Like it became a generational feud. And ultimately, but it came from something that was small and then ultimately turned into something enormous. Right? And that's very similar to a relationship. The likelihood that you and your ex hated each other from day one and somehow had a kid together, was together for years. That's ridiculous. That's not how the world works. The real relationships start from good. They all do, man. And regardless of people, especially on the internet, like red flag here and you should have known there and I'll shut the hell up. Okay, have you ever been in a relationship? Ultimately, just because the ending was bad doesn't mean that you never had a good part. Like you guys loved each other. I guarantee you laughed. You went on dates. You did the whole thing, man. You celebrated when your child was conceived and born. Like all of that good still happened, still is a part of your experience with your relationship. The sad reality is right now you're simply figuring out how the hell do you navigate the new version of this broken relaultionship.
And they're figuring out
navigating meaning Emma. Right? Navigating like you ultimately, if you didn't have Emma, you would have a clean break. Well, clean, you try to stay friends. Well, maybe, but ultimately because you have Emma, for a fact there's no such thing. You can't have a clean break because Emma is a part of your existence. So in the world of that, you're a crab fisherman on the Bering Sea, right? You have to navigate a dangerous and crazy situation all to get the payoff, and in this case is a happy and healthy relationship with your child that gives you all the love and fuel that you need to honestly just live, man. Because I know a lot about your story. Okay, our conversations go deep and our friendship is even deeper. So if this was a private conversation, I would have something to say, but because it's a public conversation, the most important thing that you need to remember, man, is that you are so much better than any perceived notion of a stranger on the internet. Okay, comments, even from somebody that is your ex, leaving comments and stuff like that, they don't get to determine if you're a good dad. If they call you a deadbeat, it doesn't make it true. Because ultimately, for the people that know you truly, from the people who get to see the type of dad you are, they know that that is complete and total bullshit. Because if you were a deadbeat dad, I would call you one, and we wouldn't be friends. So just the fact that we are not only friends, we are great friends. You know that anybody who speaks ill of you is in the wrong, because ultimately perception comes first from emotion and then second from logic. And if somebody has an axe to grind, if somebody has a personal reason to not treat you the way that you deserve, attacks on a good person are easy to do, because most of the time they agree instead of disagree. Because ultimately you don't want to confront, you don't want to conflict. You just want people to be happy and peaceful, regardless of your pain and suffering. And I am here to white knight your ass and let you know that doesn't matter, man. It doesn't matter what other people say. It's about what you do. And you have, since day one, always and forever proven yourself to be a father who would die for his daughter. So just get that deadbeat bullshit out of your head, because I don't hang out with deadbeat dads, and you are not one. You're a great father. Hence why we're doing the Dad's Perspective podcast, so we can share all of our brain power and love with people who might not have a Marcus bald man screaming at them and telling them that they're an awesome human being. Okay? So.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny you say that, because I was actually talking to a guy yesterday when I was playing Call of Duty with a new person that I met. And he was talking about how he got out of a relationship with a kid. And eventually they worked things out, and they actually ended up, I think, getting back together from the sounds of it.
Who do you, oh, sorry, I missed, you said with the kid. You mean he in a relationship with a kid?
No. So he had a relationship and they had a kid.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And then no.
I was like, sorry, wait a minute.
I would have been like, no, we ain't talking, bro.
No,
like,
911. Okay. Sorry, go on.
And he was saying how, like, he was going through a lot of stuff, like, mentally, and, like, he had his friends, but, like, he just wanted, like, a support group, and, like, he could not find one, and eventually he found one on Facebook. And that's something we'll have to talk about later on and see if, like, we want to plug them or not, because, like, it's, like, a group of just, like, basically parents that, like, came together, mostly dads, and, like, they talk and support each other, and, like, they share things, and I'm just like, that's wild. I said, because, like, something I realized that, like, this is gonna sound terrible, but, like, I feel like when it comes to separating and you being, like, a single parent, I feel like dads have it tougher. Because, like, women always will, like, I shouldn't say always, but usually support other women. Like, a lot of the parenting groups that I found were a lot of ladies. And, like, I would be like, hey, you know, I'm a fresh dad. I don't know much. Like, I have a daughter. You know, I just would like to be part of the group in case I have questions. And, you know, and they're like, no. Like, you're a guy. Like, you're single. Like, you're not allowed to be in here. And it's like, why? Like, I'm a parent too. Like, aren't parents supposed to help other parents and, like, support each other and be there when you need it?
Did they just think you were hitting on them?
No, it was simply like, we just don't want men in here. Like, men do not belong in this group. Like, we don't, like, and I'm sure it's probably like they're, like, afraid, like, you know, like, maybe I'm just there to, like, lie and, like, I don't have a kid. Like, I'm just trying to pick up, like, single moms or something, you know, whatever it may be. And I get that, you know, men don't have the best reputation, so I understand.
Well, and just, but, that's
like,
tough, though.
It's kind of fucked. And, like, I just eventually got to the point where, like, I couldn't find any support groups, and I still don't. Like, I am not part of any support. Well, I shouldn't say that. Obviously, I have, like, you and other people, but,
like official means,
like an actual official, like, a huge, like, parenting group that, like, I could be a part of. And when he said that to me, and I'm just like, that's wild that, like, you know, he found the resources eventually to find that group on Facebook, but, like, I just kind of got defeated, because I'm just like, where do you go? What resources do you have? Like, because, like, moms, I mean, like, you know, you look at it, and it's wild, like, because we started talking, and I'm like, you know, the more I think about it, like, if you're a dad and you go to a park with your kid, and your kid's just out there playing something, and you're sitting on a bench, like, 9 times out of 10, a lady probably won't come sit near you because she doesn't know you and she's kind of afraid. But most people automatically judge you, like, oh, does he have a kid here? Like, is he just a creep just being in his park?
Oh, I never thought of that.
It's like, you know, and, like, that's just the judgment you get, and, like, it's very just strange. And if you go up to someone and say, like, hey, your kid's, like, you have such a cool kid, like, you know, like, instantly you're like, okay, creep, like, get out of here. But, like, if you're a woman, you can just be like, hey, like, oh, your son's so gorgeous, or, like, what a lovely son, or, like, daughter, and stuff like that. Don't bat an eyelash, nothing. And
do you have an
like,
example,
strange.
like, when you, because, like, you've been a single dad for a minute, like, long time, right? Like, the majority of Emma's life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, do you have an instance where this, because ultimately, like, that comes from somewhere, right? That fear. Did you ever scare somebody? Like,
no. No,
So where do you
like
think
it's
that comes
just
from?
I just think it's like a mentality in a whole of just things that I've seen like in time and like in movies and
Oh,
TV
gotcha, gotcha.
shows and like stories that I've heard. But like, I mean, if you just sit and look, like it's true. Like when I've taken her to the park sometimes, like I'll be there with her and like I play with her because like sometimes like sometimes she's shy. She doesn't go to other kids. Most of the time she does. But like
Okay.
I've sat there when like she's wanting to play, and like there was an instance where like another kid came over and like they were playing, and she's like, "I want to go play on this other thing." I said, "Sweetheart, that's like an older." Because one of the parks that we go to, they have like a age thing set for the play sets, so
Mm-hmm.
like the kids don't get hurt. And I'm
Oh,
like, "Sure,
what?
you can't
Interesting.
you can't go there." I'm like, "That's for like bigger kids because like." Obviously, the reach for certain things are different because like they're for older kids, like younger kids can't reach
Yeah,
as
yeah.
far, and
Interesting.
like they might not have like the leg and stuff. So I'm like, no, sweetheart, like this other kid wants to play with you, like play with them, and like the parent can see they're playing together, and she did not come over and say like, oh, like our kids are playing together, like nothing, like
That's
completely
a
like,
bummer.
and like and it's been other instances where like I'll start playing with her and like the other people like walk away. Now I don't know if that's just because like I'm a dude and like they've been on their own and maybe they're just uncomfortable, or because they happen to recognize me because like a lot of the town kind of knows who I am due
Oh,
to
that'd be
the
crazy.
situation. So like it's you never know, but like I mean to be fair as well, I mean there have been times where I look like a raging hobo because of my facial hair and stuff.
You're a
But I
wizard,
mean,
man.
yeah, like, but I get it, and it just kind of sucks because it is difficult as like a father to really make connections
Mm.
with people. So like, um,
And that just weight, man.
and,
Like you're just I
yeah,
imagine you're always
because
kind of doing this, right? Just kind of always looking around like, please nobody fuck with me today. You
yeah,
know?
pretty much
Yeah.
when at least when I'm in town, when I go like out of town to different playgrounds and stuff, like I don't even worry about it. I don't think about it. Like we have a great time, we hang
Interesting.
out, but
Ah.
um, like there was an example where me and her went to the park and she was playing, and there was like two other kids there, and there's a guy on his phone talking to somebody, um, and like they were all playing together, and like he got off the phone and like we just started talking. And I'm
Oh,
like,
okay. Yeah.
okay. So I'm like, so this dude doesn't know me, just sees his kids playing with my kids. Like we just started chatting. Like, how old's my kid? How old's your kids? Like,
Oh
cool. And
man.
like, you come here often, stuff like that. And he's like, nah, just kind of visiting family in the area and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like, we were just chatting. But I'm like, goes to show, like, I've never once had anybody else ever just start chatting me, like, because our kids were playing together and
Shows
stuff.
how rare it is.
And I'm just like, is it simply because like a girl guy dynamic, like women are just afraid, like to single with you, like maybe he's a creep, like I don't know, like
I mean, and
it like
oh,
stranger danger, what could it be kind of
oh,
thing. So
there we go. I mean, and also too, it is certainly, it's not the same as it was 10 years ago in terms of how
no,
people interact with each other in public, man. It's like
no,
there's this general fear of each other, which is interesting. You would think in a smaller town like you live, it wouldn't be as affected, but it sounds like it's just as influenced on a small town as it is in a big town. Just this idea that people are out to get you. Like people
yeah,
are coming after you. And if you do or look the wrong way, man, it's the 911 call away from having to explain why you and your daughter are at the park. And it's so interesting to see how much of that is happening versus how much of it is perceived. Because like in social media, I mean, I've seen the videos. I've seen all the
yeah,
videos of cops beating the hell out of people just for standing on a sidewalk, right? Like so I'm very aware that it happens. But one thing I wonder is how much do I think it'll happen to me? So if I were to
yeah,
take, Mark out to the park, I don't think I would have any problem walking up to a woman and saying, "Hey, how are you?" But now that I think about it, it'd probably be just as awkward as it has been my whole life, but
yeah,
turned up a little more because of social media. Like people always were weird when I was like, "Hey, I'm a stranger. Who in the hell are you?" In a very
yeah,
nice and polite and like, "Hey, let's be friends because I like people." You're very similar to me, like,
yeah,
well, I liked
yeah,
people. Now I'm old and I don't care for them as much, but I do. I enjoyed hearing human experiences. So the best way to do that is to go and talk to individuals about their individual experiences. But like as a single dad, I have to admit, I'd also be wanting to find a mom. I'd want to be finding a single mom. So that perception would be there because even if I wasn't doing it actively, like trying to pick her up or trying to, subconsciously, it's still a male to female dynamic. It's still a single person, you know? So even if they're not going out there like, hey, baby, you want to make another baby? You know, like it's still, hello, female. You know, I am a male. How are you? And it's just like that, it's a shame that it happens, but that automatic defense, that automatic like wall, like, well...
Is he trying to pick me up? Like,
exactly.
Is he trying to like get to know me? Like, it's difficult. And like even nowadays, like my neighbor who we started talking to, like that was simply I know you're aware, but I have a neighbor who is very nosy, puts his business in everybody's shit and will, tell everybody. And
that's crazy, man.
Recently, which when we started talking, she's like, like, hey, he told me like, hey, he keeps himself, he's very rude. Don't speak to him. Like he's a real a-hole. Like we used to be friends, and he just snapped at me one day. I don't know why. Like,
interesting.
So I wouldn't bother with him. And one day she knocked on my door. I think it was for a cup of milk or flour because she was making something.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. And I was like, look, like I'm like, here, you can just take it. Like I can get more, not a big deal. And like from that, like we started talking a bit more and like becoming really good friends.
Your nosy neighbor or your other neighbor?
The other neighbor, No, me and the neighbor aren't friends anymore. Yeah, so like me and her like started talking, and like she has 2 kids, and we talk, and like our kids play together now and stuff like that, and it's great. But like that was something just like goes to show that especially in close-knit neighborhoods like where I am, because it makes it more difficult. I'm like, because you got this guy telling people stuff, and it makes it more uncomfortable to go to speak to people.
Gotcha.
Because, and it can make it, especially for single parents, because like, who do you have to defend you, really? Like, I don't have, but luckily I have my neighbor who speaks up for me and stuff like that, and it's been a little bit easier. But it's just difficult sometimes because you never know, like, somebody could just swap, and then like that's another person spreading stuff, and in a small town, it gets around if they know people. It can make it difficult.
Well, it goes so much to that, like, community, right? It takes community. I say it a lot. It takes community to live a happy life. And even more so, it takes community to raise a happy, good child, right? And, like, as a dad, who's your community? Most digital. Hey, buddy from across the country, by the way. Like, of course, I would do everything I could to be there for you. But that's no different than, hey, I need some flour. Like, that is what I think... enough people don't realize what a community actually is. That's a community. A community's, hey, neighbor, I got to go do something. Will you please just help me for a second? It's, it's not a dependency. It's not a relationship. It's just an effort of working together towards a goal. And like you said, how hard is it for a single dad to find a community? And here's not the worst part. I don't want to make this negative, because you never take it to a negative. You always look for more like problems to solve, right?
Yeah,
but ultimately, one problem to solve is you have a daughter. Like, think about how much easier it would be to have a son as a single dad, as you being a father.
Yeah.
Ultimately, because
it'd be a lot easier.
You would know so much better. So as much as it's better to have some people to rely on, like, listen, I'm a dude. I can at least fake it till I make it with this kid, and he'll be fine. But as a daughter, you're like, sweet mercy, I don't know. Like, there's so much stuff about a girl that I am not a girl, so I can't help with that. So then you go to find help for girl issues. Well, who are you going to go to? A girl, another mom, another female. So now you as a dad, a man, has to talk to a female about female private stuff, which is already awkward if you know somebody, let alone if you have to do it with a stranger like you do. Like, I get to go to my mom. If I had a daughter and I didn't have Lindsay, and I could go to, like, my sisters, my mom. Like, I have females that I'm very close with, and then I'd still be like, so you're going to tell them, right? I don't have to tell her. You're going to show her how to do it? Because come on. I will, but I don't want to. This is a girl thing. So, and I guess I'm just speaking out loud, but
I mean,
wow, what a mountain, man. Like,
I have my mom, but like she has her own issues, and I feel like as a parent, I'm like, look, like she's not always going to be here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And we didn't always have the best relationship and stuff like that. And she's done a lot for me since then, and it's kind of repaired, but it's still not. I don't know, like it's still for me kind of strange somewhat. So like I still
Time.
go to my female friends and stuff, but like, um, there was a girl in my life not too long ago that I was with that like, yeah, it didn't work out, but like my daughter loves her to death.
Yeah.
To the point that like she wanted her to be her stepmom, and I was like, look, sweetheart, like
Oh.
unfortunately that's not gonna happen. Like sometime, and like we had a discussion like, well, like why not, and like why can't she be this person, and I'm just like, look, like sometimes like, so you know how you have friends, she's like, yeah, I'm like, well, and sometimes you have friends that you don't like anymore, right? You don't talk to them, and she's like, yeah. I'm like, well, that's kind of the same thing. I'm like, we just we still talk a lot. I'm like, but we just like each other that way anymore. I'm like, so I'm like, it's different.
Hmm.
And then like I talked to this person, I'm like, look, like my daughter loves you, you love my daughter, like even though we've never been married and stuff, like, would you be her stepmom? And she's like all for it. So like my daughter just prefers her that way, and like they talk
Oh,
on
wow.
Snapchat and video, and like my daughter always asks about her when I pick her up from school, and they check in on each other, and like it's
Yeah.
great. And to have that person, and like I've had this person I can go to for questions, and it's less awkward, and it's just nice like finding that one person. Because that's really all it takes, that one person who
Yeah.
genuinely gives you a chance and sees the good in you, and like even if you
True,
don't work
man.
out, like it takes a lot to still remain in the some capacity friends. And like, you know, things aren't perfect, and there's issues sometimes in fighting, but like
Such is life.
that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
such
it
is
just
life.
goes to show, like I look back and I'm like, you know, like I fight with some friends, but like for me and her it's a different level because we still generally like have that love for each other.
Yeah.
And like it made me realize like when you find like that person who generally loves you no matter what, like they still show it daily, they still make that effort, they still care about you, and like even though there's things that you may not agree with, like they put up with each other and stuff. And you know, when I have my issues, like that person's still there for me and they support me. And like when I have questions about the kiddo and I'm like, hey, like I got this question, you're like, oh yeah, like that's normal for a lady. And I'm like, oh, okay. And like
Ah,
I've had to ask some like really like
you're good.
uncomfortable questions, I guess. You know,
To
that
say
like
the least.
I can't, like me and my mom, like my family as a whole, like we're very close. And I've had to ask my mom some very uncomfortable questions why I was with my ex about certain things that happened. Um, that like normal people, like I would never in a million years ask my mom or my dad if this happened. But like I'm just like, it's just how
You're
my
like, what's
family
the
is.
topic? Yeah, you're gonna make these people
Uh,
be curious as hell. You don't got to we just at least
so
tell what's generally about.
it was
Give
of
us an
a
example.
it was of a sexual nature of something that happened that I've never experienced before with a lady
Okay.
that I had to go to my mom about and ask, and it was very uncomfortable because I'm like, you know, yeah, you have the version of beestalk, but that's kind of as far as it
Yeah.
goes. So
Surface.
then when you got to ask other questions, yeah, it gets very uncomfortable. Let me tell you, but like,
Yeah. Especially as an
um,
adult.
yeah, and like it goes to show because at one point later on, like we always told my mom and everybody else like oh it just kind of accidentally happened, like we didn't plan Emma at
Yeah.
all. But like it was like we planned her and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and my mom was just like eventually like after a breakup like months later she's like, I want to let you know something. She's and I'm like, what? And she's like, you know I'm not stupid, right? And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, I know that this wasn't an accident. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, I'm not dumb. And then she's like, by the way, she's like, you know, we can hear you guys, right? And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, we heard you. And I'm like,
All right.
do you know how uncomfortable that makes me
Yeah.
feel? I'm like, you could have said something. I'm like,
Turn up the music, mom.
yeah, like TV.
Oh,
Um, but like that's just how my family
wow.
is. But like
Yeah.
it just goes to show, like, if you have a close knit family, like, it means a lot
Mm,
because your kid can come to you for anything.
yeah.
And it's just like, you know,
No
how many
fear.
people out there are like, oh, well, my kid didn't come to me. We could prevent this. Or like, they didn't come to me about drugs and stuff. And like, for me with the kiddo, like, I always tell her, like, hey, like, what's going on? Because it's something that I don't know if it's normal or just because what she's been through, but there's been times when we just be sitting there and you'd be talking, or like, um, during the summer when I get her for a week and then like we swap off, like I usually in between, like I just have like we have what we call a lazy day, like where it's just like, hey,
Mm,
dad's gonna take his time, you take your time. a couple hours where you just do whatever you want. I'm like, as long as you're not getting in trouble, like watch your tablet, play games by yourself, play with your toys, draw, whatever. And I'll play games where like I usually just watch like a movie. And then once I'm done, like, okay, like what do you want to do? And she will just be like, Dad, I'm like, yes. And she'll be like, can I tell you something? And I'm just like, yeah, I'm like, you can tell me anything, sweetheart. I'm like, what's up? And then like, it's just some weird just story she made up, or like just a question she has.
Okay.
And like, I just like, you always got to reassure, like, if your kid ever asks you that, she's like, yeah, sweetheart, like, you could always ask me anything, because like, if you're like, just say yes, like, they're in their head, you're like, okay, like I can ask them, not reassuring, like, hey, yes, you can always ask me anything, because then in their head, you're like, oh, well, mommy or daddy said like anytime I have a question or I need to tell them something, like it reassures them like, yes, you can always tell me something, like no matter what it is, because like for me, if I just hear yes or no, it's not to me in my head, it doesn't resonate. Like, no, you can always come to me. It's like in this moment, yes, you can tell me something, but what about next time? Is it going to be a no? Like, so I try to reassure her that no matter what, you can always come to me. Like, you can ask me anything, because as much as sometimes I jokingly tell people, I'm like, I kind of regret that, because there have been days when it's just like, hey, why is the sun red? Why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green? And I'm just like giving answers, and then it's always like, why? 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 And I'm just like, you know what? And then I remember the one conversation we had about the moon was I was going to drop her off to her mom, and she was asking me like a billion questions about it. And I'm like, hey, I'm like, you know what? You know what would be great? I'm like, why don't you ask mommy when you get to see mom? I'm like, because you know what? Mommy is smarter than dad about the moon, and she will have the answers for you.
She's the moon expert.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, okay. And I can only imagine that ride home.
Oh man!
But like, it gives me a good chuckle sometimes, because I'm just like, kid, I'm like, I can't. I'm like, you know what? There's ask mom. Like, but
if it was if it was the opposite, man, like if she was super quiet and like super reserved, you would probably be like, come on, give me more, child. Like, ask me questions, bug me, because it's always greener on the other side, right? Like ultimately. My nephew is a good example. He's a very reserved, he's a very stoic child, right? He doesn't kind of goof around much. He does every now and then, but when you do, it's like, it's like a treat to kind of pull that fire out of his soul, But he's very reserved. So I want him to be more, right? Like I want emotion. Get loud, child. And then the funny part is the opposite. Like it sounds like Emma just question, comments, chit and chatting.
Dude, she is just an outgoing chatterbox. Like, some days I feel like she's like 20 years old with some of the stuff that she says in comments.
Yeah.
And, man, because I recall the one day on the phone, we were video chatting, and she was at her mom's house. And her mom had gone somewhere with her, and then, like, we were talking, she was telling about it. And the one day she's like, Dad, let me tell you. And I'm just like, oh, here we go.
Oh, what a
and
phrase.
She's like, why we were there. And I'm like, what are you, like 30? Like, what is this? And I'm just like, kid, I cannot. Where do you learn this stuff?
Oh,
and it's
fun,
hilarious, some of the things she says, but like, it's just great. And like, those are the times that like I miss, when I'm just like, this is what I want. I'm like, we don't have to get along with like the other parents, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like, just being able to video chat and just talk and have a good time and just kind of laugh and like talk to each other about like the kid and stuff like that. And maybe occasionally going out to do things with the kid on rare occasions, like ice cream or like getting close together and stuff like we used to. Like, just being able to do that like on friendly terms, like, is nice. And like, it's good for her, and like growing up and seeing that. And it sucks. And it's why I push for like parents just like try to get along and just realize that their kid sees this. And it's good to reassure them that like, hey, you can always come to us for questions, get along. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know how I'm going to do that after this. Like, this is the first time ever that I'm like, I'm done. Like, because every person gets that point.
Third time?
The third time for just the essay in general. But like the 10th or 11th time for
just taking her away
CYS. Yeah, and I'm just to the point where I'm just like, and they say, oh, well, this time, like, it wasn't anybody saying anything. Like, it came from your kid itself. And it's like,
Whatever, dude.
okay. I'm like, but kids are coachable. It's not that hard. I mean, they've said
Absolutely.
it before. Like, we've seen this many times. Like, like it's not like, hey, I'll give you this if you say this. It's not difficult. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, this isn't the
And
first time. She now knows this is something, because even if, sorry, just, it drives me crazy because so many people downplay the effect of a collective effort, right? This is not the first time Emma has had to be interviewed, blah, 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 right? So now she knows that this is a resource that can be utilized for something. It doesn't mean she's like being out there being malicious, but she now knows these words. She knows these phrases, man.
Yeah.
And like, because they're in her head, she might just say it and just, it's such a shame because she needs to be out of this world. She needs to be protected, of course.
Yeah, and she doesn't understand certain things. Like, I mean, kids are kids. They don't grasp certain things because like a big thing that we have, and I can't verify that, obviously you are a product of the environment that you were raised in. And right now, I don't know, it's still really bad. I know it used to be, but we had a major issue where she would constantly lie when she'd go to her mom's house.
Oh.
And say certain things, and then I get a phone call and like we discuss it. And that's kind of the part that really missed me, is that like I could have received a phone call and said, hey, this was said. Is there anything like, like, well, she might just be misinterpreting it because this happened or whatever, but I don't get those. It's simply like, if we're not fighting and there's nothing going on, then I get those phone calls. Other times it's just straight up, hey, see what's at my door, police. But like kids don't understand, and what they perceive as one thing, that's like, oh, I'm just gonna say this because for me, like, that's not a big deal. But like to other people, like, no, that's a big thing. Like, for an adult, if I, punch someone in the face, like that's a big thing. But if, the kiddo sees me and like we're messing around and I accidentally like bump her in the face or something like that because we're horse playing,
Dad hit me.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, well, that's not really what happened.
Yeah.
She doesn't know the full story. So then she'd be like, oh, I heard that, story hit his kid. It's like, no, we were horsing around and I accidentally bumped in the face and, and didn't really mark or anything. But like for her, she's like, oh no, dad hit me in the face, because she doesn't understand hitting is different than, an accident.
And because you've been accused before, now
and
it's not just like, well, what really happened, sweetie? It's like so because you've been guilty, not because you've never been guilty, because you've been accused. Now, every time there's even an iteration of something in like bad, you are automatically guilty. Like, nope, we're taking Em away for 2 months. No investigation needed. It's like, what? Sorry.
My thing is that as a parent, like if you know the other parent very well and you trust that person, you need to stand up for that other parent. Be like, hey, listen, we may not get along. I may not like this person, but they would never do such a thing.
I do know him.
I understand that like you still need to investigate, but I'm clarifying that like on the record that like this person would never do this, because that goes a long way.
It does, man.
And stuff like that. And the fact this never happened really kind of goes to show, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that cuts even deeper.
I mean, at this point, I really don't care. I'm kind of to the point, and it's just
deep.
like, my thing is like, eventually good people will get tired of being a good person. And, something that you have to reflect on is like, eventually this kid is going to see that. And it's just like, this kid's like, okay, well, like dad used to be a good person. Now, like, he seems very like mean and rude. And it's just like, nobody talks about how you eventually got there and stuff like that. And as a kid, you don't want that reflected upon the child. Like, like you're pushing this person to the point of where like now they're going to start being that person they make you out to be, because not everybody's going to keep dealing with the same BS over and over and over. Eventually they're going to snap. And you see it in the news very often, like, oh, like, oh, he was such a quiet guy. And then, I don't know, like, we know, like, he was having issues with, like, his ex-wife, and suddenly he snapped and, like, shot up the house. And it's just like, he used to be so quiet and well-reserved, and he snapped one day. And it's just like, okay, but, like, what brought him to that point? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's very sad to see. Yeah, and it's just like, it's very difficult sometimes, and it makes people depressed, and it's just like, that kid now has to go without like parents or a parent while the other one's in jail. And it's just like, they have to live with that stuff, and they don't realize the repercussions that they have on their kid, because for me, like, I'm just at the point of like, I don't really care. For my daughter's sake, I do, but I'm just kind of fed up. And it's just like, now, what kind of relationship can we have as co-parenting when I'm just like,
Yeah.
I really don't want to speak to you anymore. I don't want to do anything more than simply like, she was good this week. She ate this. This is when she had a shower. You need to do
Yeah.
this. And then, um, and that's kind of reflected on the kid because now, like, there will be no more like occasionally going to get ice cream together or
Yeah.
shopping for clothes or anything like that. And
You
it's
could
gonna be
argue
like,
it'd be
okay,
better though. I mean,
I mean,
because getting her out of that, because ultimately I've seen
yeah,
most of the best co-parenting scenarios I've seen is when the parents barely interact. Like they don't
yeah.
fight, they don't love, they just take care of the kid.
And I think that's kind of what it's gotten to because I've just to the point where I'm fed up. But like at the same time, she loved it and she had fun. And like we could do that because
Yeah.
we were at a point where like I wouldn't say that we were friends or anything, but like kind of to the point where like we chatted and we would chat sometimes like when she wasn't around and stuff like that because she may be at like her parents' house and stuff. And it was nice.
Yeah.
And it's like that's the kind of I don't want to say well, I mean, I guess technically it is kind of a relationship in a way because you have a
It
kid
is by
together. So
definition.
like where we could just chat about the kid and just kind of joke and laugh and like talk about memories and stuff and like it wasn't painful and like we weren't
Mm,
fighting and stuff and it was nice and like for the kiddo like being able to once in a while go to get ice cream and spend time like that is time that like she doesn't get to have anymore because it's like hey I get to go do something with mom and dad yeah it might be once in a great while but like that's still a memory that she gets to have like hey my parents are so cool that even though they hated each other they could take that time to still like reminisce and take the time apart to like, hey,
yeah.
let's go get ice cream together as like kind of a family and like give our child that memory. And now she will never have that again. And it
Yeah.
kind of sucks. And it's
Kind of
like,
takes away that fairy tale side of it, you know?
yeah, and it's just like, and for me, it's more of like I wanted our child to grow up to show like, hey, even though mom and dad have differences, we don't get along, we fight, we argue, like we can put our differences aside for you at some point to be able to do something together and give you that memory.
Yeah.
Because to me,
And
I
you
feel like it's
did.
important.
One thing,
Yeah.
it's not as many as I'm sure you would like, but she
No,
does have. I
but
remember when you told me that ice cream story.
yeah,
I
and
do. That's a good memory
like
for Emma.
for people who are separating or are separated, like you would be amazed at how much kids will remember from their childhood because for me like
Oh,
my mom and dad were separated and you know I didn't always have great stories about my dad or my stepmom from my mom. My dad never really said anything, my stepmom never said anything, and it really stuck with me because like now I've gotten older and I'm going through what I'm going through. I've had that conversation with my dad. I'm like, hey, thank you. And he's like, for what? And I'm like, for never bad mouthing mom or you know the
yeah.
situation and never feeling a fit and like I got to a point where I didn't want to go to my dad's, and like as I got older, through like teenage years and stuff like that, because I didn't get along with my stepmom and stuff like that, and I look back and I still don't necessarily like my stepmom a ton. Like I still love her; she's my stepmom, and you know she gave me my step brothers, one I consider a brother, and like my dad and stuff like that is happy and stuff. But you know, I look back and I'm like, you know, my dad never fought to make me come visit. My dad never spoke up and forced my mom to send me. And I look back now and I'm like, he just gave me that freedom because like he's like letting me be my own person and not force me into
Mm,
something I clearly didn't want. And you know, and I look back and I'm like, you know, he could have said stuff about my mom, like my mom did about my dad. And I look back and I'm like, he not once ever did that. And
so you
he
don't
put
have
me
that.
first. And I'm like, you know, like thank you for not doing that. And thank you for, you know, letting me make my own decisions and not forcing me into it and hating you over something that I should have hated you for. And I always held that in. And, you know, looking back, it's just like, hey, you know, who's the bad guy here? Like, you know, I love my mom to death, but it's like, you know what? Like, my mom told me stories about like this happened and like why this didn't. And I was like, is that the truth? I don't
Ooh,
know.
yeah.
But like, you know, and I look back and I'm like, you know what? Like, why couldn't you just like put your differences aside and just been like, hey, you know what? Your dad loves you. I love you. It is what it is. And just kept whatever it was between you guys separate
Human
and but it
condition, man.
yeah but it stays with you
Yeah.
and for people to separate like your kids are going to know this and if you're bad mouthing and making up stories and everything else like even if you deny it all you want you can say I never said that I didn't do that but as I've always said actions speak louder than words and people can
Hmm.
put two and two together and something that I never really understood is a saying like, if it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. It's probably a
It's
duck.
probably a duck, right?
Like, yeah. And I never really understood that until like after everything I've been through. I'm like, hey, I have people telling me like, hey, this is what's happening. We can see the pattern. And after a while, it's like, hey, I mean, it's quacking like a duck. It's
Yeah,
looking like a
man.
duck. Probably a duck.
Yep.
And like, when the kid gets older and they look back, if you have, like with me, I have text messages, I have, screenshots, I have everything. Like, if the day ever came where, our child saw that, like, they can form their own opinion. I'm not going to
Yeah.
put anything in their head. And it's just like,
Do you
that's
think you'd
kind of
want
the
to
thing.
though? Do you think like you'd want to show your kid all of that,
No,
especially if it's been years and years?
my thing is, even though I'm to the point where like I don't want anything to do with my other half anymore, and I'm very strictly going to keep it to text message. There will be no phone calls
Yeah, man.
unless I get a text message saying, "Hey, it's urgent. This is going on. I need to talk to you." I'm not answering that phone.
Good
And
for you.
it also hurts the kiddo because like, oh well, the kiddo wants a video chat. Well, you know what? Every time we video chat, somehow, some way, shape, or form, we end up chatting. And I don't want that.
Mm.
And my thing
Anymore.
is even if we got to the point where we're 100%, can co-parent and we're friendly to each other and stuff like that, and she's 18 and she's like, Dad, I want to know why you and Mom aren't together and why it seemed like, I remember this growing up, like what going, and I could be like, listen, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to wreck your relationship with your mom. Let's not. But she also has a right to know, like, that is your mom. I am, your dad, and you want to know why, and I'm not gonna hide it. But like, my thing is like, look, go talk to your mom, see what she thinks,
Get both sides.
get both sides, and then come talk to me after you talk to mom. And if she wants to tell you and shows you stuff, then you come talk to me, see my side, and make your own opinion.
Yeah.
But
Why do you leave it up to your ex to decide that for you? Shouldn't that be your right to make the decision?
it's more the fact is like it just adds fuel to the fire, and at that point, it's just like I just want to live my life and not rock the boat.
Yeah.
And at that point, if it's like, hey, even though our daughter came to me and said, "Hey, I could show her that," well, then like if she gets ticked off with her mom and goes over and starts ranting and raving, it's just like that's fuel in the fire, and that's gonna open a whole other can of
Yeah.
worms that I don't want to deal with. So like at least if our child goes talks to mom and says, "Hey, why are you dad not together? I want to know," and then whatever she says and she sees messages, whatever she may or may not have, I know then if our daughter comes to me like, "Hey, dad, you're a real piece of shit. You did this to mom and everything else," I'm like, okay, hey, first off, calm down.
Yeah.
Listen to me. I'm going to show you, and I'll pull out everything. I said, look, here's everything that I have. You're more than welcome to go through it. If you still feel that way, you're an adult. You can make your own decisions. You don't want to speak to me, whatever. That so be it. I can
This
deal with it, and it's not a repercussion of like I said something, and then she goes to her mom, and then next there's an argument and a fight, and then it's just back to square one.
so
I
you
don't
more
want
want
it.
to
I don't
do
want the headache.
if you have to, you want to
Yeah,
be able to defend yourself against accusations, and
yeah.
ultimately, if you never have a reason, let sleeping dogs lie. Does that? I just want to
Pretty
make sure I'm
much.
hearing what you
Yeah.
said because that's,
No, pretty
dude.
much.
That's
It's
I respect that mentality.
my thing is yes, I may not like this person. Yes, I may never want to speak to them. Yes, and yes, I may be counting the years until I hopefully get to the point where I don't have to. Even though it's like people are like, oh well, you're always gonna have to deal with her because like that's your child's mom. And like,
No, you
no, once
don't.
the kiddo's like basically 16, I don't really need to ever really talk to her unless like the child does something really bad. And once she turns
Yep.
18, I don't have to assess for when the kiddo gets married and that's or like something
Even
major
then,
happens
man.
like the hospital. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and my thing is just like that is not my relationship. Like I
Mm.
don't have to deal with it after a certain point. Like why would I go out of my way to show the kiddo something that may or may not ruin the relationship with their mother simply because I got a stick on my butt and I'm just gonna be like, hey, like you asked, here you go, just
Yeah.
give it to her, and then it wrecks the relationship, and then she may or may not never talk to her mom again. Like no, that's a piece of shit thing to do.
Yeah. Well, you got to think
Like
what good comes from it. Like, if
yeah,
no good is going to come from it, you should fight against it to a reasonable level. And
yeah,
like
like
defending yourself is one thing, but being like, you know what, you're old enough to hate your mom. Here, you look at all this shit. You know,
yeah,
because it would be so against what you've always done. Because then you're now a cause of somebody's like a rage, and it's just that I don't
yeah.
think that would sit well with you, knowing that you
No, and
pissed off your daughter.
no, and I want to clarify. I'm not saying her mom would do the same thing or anything like
Oh, I
that.
didn't take it that way
But
either. In
well, I mean, for listeners, just in case they take it that way, you know what I'm
Oh yeah.
saying?
Oh yeah. People. Hey,
Um,
hey, you guys.
uh, but it's important. Like end of the day, like your kiddo is the most important thing, and reassuring them that like no matter what questions they have, they can come to you, but you have to be very selective of how you respond to certain questions because you need to realize like they may not go to the other parent and ask them
Yeah,
the same
true.
question or phrase it the same way or ask their other parent at all. So it could be a simple question of like, why do boys have weenies and ladies don't? And they might ask you and they don't ask the other half. Depending on how you answer that could
True.
affect
That's
this
a good
kid for the
point.
rest of their lives. So
I never
like
thought about that.
you really need to think about like, is this a question they may or not? Because
Hmm.
at one point, like this is a conversation I've never had with the kiddo that I had to assume maybe because I don't remember if she said she got out of the shower and the kiddo saw or whatever it was, but like she asked a certain question about woman body parts.
Hmm.
Kiddos never asked me that question ever, not once.
I
Ever asked me
believe it.
like, why does mommy have this and why does daddy have this or anything like that. And uh, a certain point where like I try very hard, like if I shower, I'm like, hey kiddo, I'm here if you need me. I have the door open a little bit so I can hear, but like don't come in here unless like you got hurt or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
And she'll come to the door, knock, and if I don't answer, she'll kind of open a bit and yell, and I'm like, what? And like I'll poke my head out.
Yeah.
Um, and she'll need something. I'm like, okay, give me a minute. I need to get out of the shower. Shut the door, please. Don't come back in here. You
Yeah,
gotta get
yeah.
out. I'm gonna get and stuff like that. Because I'm like, even though she's little, like it's so weird. And I don't need
Yeah.
her seeing that stuff and then having to have that conversation. But like, it's just weird the conversations that like she has. And another thing that some people don't see because you probably won't see unless you separate. But like the kiddo has certain things that she does at her mom's house or doesn't do here. Like,
Oh, I bet.
she will eat blueberries at her mom's house and her grandparents' house, but here, she would not eat blueberries for me. And
What?
then,
Interesting.
like for me, she eats Lunchables,
Okay.
and she doesn't eat the crackers. But at her mom's house for a while, she wouldn't eat Lunchables, or she wouldn't eat
Huh.
the cheese there, but she would eat the crackers and the ham.
So depending on where she
And
was at, it
yeah,
changed.
and it would change. And it was so weird. Like at her mom's house, she eats
Interesting.
bananas, but here, oh, dad, I don't like bananas.
Of course not.
What are you talking about? You eat bananas at mom's house. No, I don't. I'm like,
That's
so your
so
mom's
interesting.
lying to me?
Yeah. Huh.
Maybe.
How funny.
And I'm just like,
That's fun.
I'm like, it is the craziest things. And it's just like, same for conversations and how she acts. And it's just like, that is something you need to take into account if you separate. Like, your kid may act differently. And sometimes you may not understand why, but it could just be the fact that you're separate and it's just like attention seeking
Yeah.
or just control that they have or certain things to separate like the different houses.
Man.
And
Or their own
it's
little
a
bit of
lot.
power, right? Because kids,
Yeah.
they want power too. And if
Yeah.
they can make a decision like, I'm not eating blueberries at dad's, even though if it's like subconscious, it's still like a power move, you know?
Yeah. Like it's something I can control because there's certain things in my life I can't
Yeah.
control right now. And
Wow.
I go with it. Like at her mom's house, like she will give her certain like choices at dinner. Like, hey, you can have this or you can have this. And then if the kiddo picks it and doesn't want it, then she throws a fit and like and meltdown and stuff like that. And for here, like obviously at every household there's gonna be different parenting choices and
Oh,
discipline and
yeah.
stuff. But for me here, like I don't really just give her two options. I'm just gonna like, hey, what do you want for dinner? And I just make whatever she wants.
Oh,
And
wow.
I don't question it. And like I'm just like, I will eat whatever you make, whatever. And then she's like, I make it. And she's like, I don't want it. I'm like, okay, well, it's gonna sit here until you decide that you want it and you're not having anything else because
Yeah,
like I'm
yeah.
not playing this game. And for the most part, her mom does the same thing. I don't think she's ever said like, okay, well, you don't eat that. I'll make something different. And another thing too is like as your kids get older, your taste buds change and
True.
like different things. So like if your kid suddenly is like, "Hey, I don't eat that," don't be like, "No, you eat that. You're gonna eat this." Be like, "Okay, well, maybe like it's been a long time since we had this. Maybe she truly doesn't like it anymore."
Mhm.
So say, "Okay, well, can you at least try it?" And if they fight and say no, like, "Okay, fine." And then wait a little while and then try to make them eat again. If they don't, then maybe a dinner for again another night. Try like maybe a week or two later, and if they still don't like it, okay, then they truly may not like it. Don't just yell at them like, "No, you like it."
Yeah.
Because I used to love peanut butter fluff. Now I'm not really a big fan, and my taste buds have changed over the years. I
Peanut
just
butter
don't.
fluff. What the hell is that?
And
Never even heard of that. I've heard of
you've never
marshmallow
peanut
fluff.
butter fluff? Well,
We
okay,
make
well,
our own peanut butter, so I don't.
Fluffernutter is another thing that we call it here.
Fluffernutter,
But
okay.
it's basically peanut butter fluff. It's just marshmallow in a container, like
Oh,
melted marshmallow that you just spread on bread.
with peanut butter, but it's peanut
Yeah,
butter
with peanut
version.
butter. Yeah, or you
Okay.
can do jelly, but yeah, most times like here, at least in Pennsylvania, like we replace the jelly with the fluff, and we just call it peanut butter fluff.
Oh, so instead of a peanut butter and jelly, it's a peanut butter and marshmallow fluff?
Yeah.
Oh,
so we just call it like a Fluffernutter. Just like I learned recently,
PBF.
and I didn't know this, is that how do you make your grilled cheeses? Do you use butter?
Yeah, on the outside.
Okay, yeah. Did you know people make that with mayonnaise? And I didn't know that. They use
on the
mayonnaise
outside?
On the outside, yeah, to toast it instead of peanut butter. I know. See, that's the same reaction I had, Marcus. I was like, what? That is disgusting. God. What is wrong with you? No, you deserve to be in jail. And was it my ex who told me that she does that? It was somebody who told me that, and I don't remember who it was. And I was like, absolutely not. I'll tell you what, Marcus. I bless you. I broke down, and I was like, you know what? I always tell the kiddo, hey, you have to at least try it once. If you don't like it, you don't have to eat it. So
fair enough.
I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do this. I made one with mayonnaise, and I was like, I'm not gonna like this because I'm not a huge mayonnaise fan.
I even like mayonnaise, and it sounds gross.
I'll tell you what. To this day, since I've learned that,
no,
I do not make grilled cheese sandwiches with butter anymore. It's mayonnaise.
Oh no, he's been corrupted. No wonder. Like, I knew it,
dude. I was just like, the texture's completely different, and you can't even taste the mayonnaise. But it's just so wild because, and I look back and I was like, you know what? And a lot of people were disgusted by this. You put ketchup on your eggs, yes?
No, God, absolutely not.
Okay. So you're a third option. So a
mayonnaise
lot of
on eggs?
No, ketchup.
Okay,
ketchup on eggs.
No ketchup. I've tried it, don't like it. It's disgusting.
A lot of people I know put ketchup on their eggs.
Me too.
I had a cousin who put syrup on their eggs.
I've done that before.
I was like, that is disgusting. What is wrong with you? And again, eventually I tried it. And, I do not put ketchup on my eggs anymore. I use syrup.
I've tried both. Syrup on the eggs is fine if it's like because your French toast is next to your eggs, so you get a little bit of sweetness.
Nah, just scrambled eggs and I just put some syrup on there and I'm good to go.
Well, no wonder your teeth are gone.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. But it's just like, it goes to show with kids, like, they're willing to try anything. They have the most carefree sense in the world. I'm like, if people would just be more like that, try anything once and just kind of be carefree about shit.
Yep.
And like, it would make the world such a better place. And it's just like, you gotta instill that in your kid of like, hey, you may not get along with someone, but just like, hey, just, you know what? Try to get along. If you can't, just do what you can to avoid that.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what I do with my co-parenting mentality. Like, hey, I may not like this person, we may not get along. Or like, there was something my ex wanted to do for like a punishment that I didn't necessarily agree with, but I'm like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. And I tried it and it wasn't too bad.
Yeah. What was it?
I'm trying to remember. I honestly can't tell you what it was.
Because how do you
I don't use it?
There's a big difference between hurting someone and scaring someone. A lot of times punishments scare. They don't hurt.
I wanna say,
was it the toe hang?
Yeah, toe hang.
Couple toes. No. Shake them. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that.
I want to say it was just I think it was taking stuff away from her.
Okay.
Because like I'm not a big fan of like with like certain things, depending on the punishment, like taking it away, if it was severe enough. But we were having a really big issue with like the lying and the fibbing and the like not eating certain things. And she's like, look, like, I'm taking stuff away from her, like, at your house, I don't know what you do, like maybe we can try that. And I was like, all right, because like for me, I'm like, I will punish you. I'm like, but I'm not gonna take your stuff away. I'm like, because I'm like, what does that really do? Like, okay, I took it away from you, but you're gonna get it back eventually. So
it adds a consequence.
Kind of
like being grounded.
So I'm like, now depending on the action, yes. I'm like, because at that point, yeah, now you realize like, hey, I really don't want you doing that. So if I take away your favorite thing, you're gonna second guess. I'm like, for something minor of like, oh well, I'm not really eating and doing this. I'm like, no, I'm not for that. I'm not gonna punish you for that, because
so more make the punishment match the crime kind of.
Yeah. So I was like, fine, we'll give it a shot. And I did it and it worked and things got better. So now like
nice.
I still, am hesitant about doing it certain times, but depending what she's doing at her mom's house, because a big thing that you will have to get used to when you co-parent is your kid is going to act differently at each house. And one house, they are probably going to be better than at the other house. At my house,
I believe it.
My kiddo, I very rarely have to discipline. And her mom at one point was like, "Well, you're the fun parent. You don't have to discipline her because you got to let her get away with murder."
That's what I was gonna ask.
No, I'm like, I don't. I'm like, she just doesn't act up. I'm like, and she listens to me when I have to say something. I'm like,
Yep.
I'm literally just like, hey, one. And sometimes she kind of giggles or just ignores me. And then I get to two, and then she kind of just like lets it go. And she's like, no, okay. And like at her mom's house, she just does not listen. Like her mom has to yell and fight and fuss. And
your mom can get to 10, or her mom can get to 10 and not mad. Yeah.
And it's gotten better. And like we've had a discussion when we were getting along, like, hey, like you don't have ADHD, so you don't quite understand how it works. And like I'll try to explain to her, and I'm like, and some of the things, like the very rare occasion we've ever talked about a relationship, and I'm just like, hey, now you understand. Like it wasn't me being a butthole. It is part of my ADHD, and this is kind of what you had to deal with. I'm like, but at the time, she was young and didn't really want to listen and hear it, and it was when she's done some growing. I give her credit for that.
We all
she's done some growing, and like I'm like, look, like I know it's hard for you because of like certain ways that she was raised, and that sticks with her, and everybody's raised different. And I'm like, look, you need to try just to not get so frustrated, because she is if she does have ADHD, which I think she does, she is going to have things in her head that come in and it's going to instantly go out the other side. Like you need to try to be a bit more patient and understanding and stuff like that, and see if it makes a difference. And she has been getting better with it, and she's been trying to understand more and learn about ADHD and like some other stuff and things like that. And she's been getting better, and Emma's been doing better. And I've been even though I haven't told her, I'm very proud of her that she has gotten, I don't want to say more mellow, but I think more understanding of the kiddo and how she reacts to certain things.
Like to become more patient.
Yeah, in a way. Man. But it's just a big thing is constantly growing with your kid, because it's not just your kid growing, teaching them and stuff. Like you have to learn to be able to grow as well. And
you're never done living. Like
no.
There's always new lessons, new experiences that you're going to have to figure out and learn how to teach your kid how to do.
Yeah, and it is definitely a hurdle, because like I have a lot of friends that think just because they're out of school and stuff, they don't want to learn anymore.
Oh, no way.
A friend who was like, oh, you're super nerdy. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, you talk about the nerdiest stuff. Like you're talking about how mammoths are being brought back and how they're doing it and how excited you are and like what this could mean. And they're like, who cares?
I do.
Like, I do. I'm like, I like learning.
Yeah.
And they're like, but why? And I'm like, okay, let me ask you a question. I was like, if the world ends tomorrow, I was like, and it's the apocalypse and you got to learn how to survive. I'm like, do you know how to do certain things?
Yeah.
And she's like, no. I'm like, okay. And you know what happens? I'm like, that's why I like learning. I'm like, because for you, it might be useless information. I'm like, but at some point we may need to know this. I'm like, and guess what? Who has that knowledge? I do. It might be dumb, but
you ever seen Dr. Stone? It's an anime. It's fantastic. Yes. It's exactly about that scenario. Okay, the world basically thousands and thousands of years passed. We lost all of human knowledge. And guess what? The one guy who knew it, who knew the vast, totality collection of human knowledge, was the one who rebuilt civilization. Surprise, surprise. And also outside of that, it's also awesome to know stuff. Because of Google, we really have too many times are people willing to not value knowledge because they just think like it's there. Like, I'll just Google it. It's like, but what if you're in the woods? What if you're camping? What if you just don't want to Google it? What if you just want to be a competent person, right? There's no reason to stop learning, be it reading, be it documentaries, be it life experiences, hobbies, whatever it is, man. Until you are dead, you really shouldn't stop doing and learning stuff because you're still alive. And then, like you said, as a parent, it's even more important to learn and do stuff as you grow because your kid is doing everything for the first time. So you don't want to like limit your child's desire to obtain knowledge because you feel that you're done. Right? Like they don't know what you know, which apparently is everything. And that's why you don't need to learn anymore. But the reality is my kid, if he gets smarter than me, I screwed up. I did it wrong. I want him to get smarter than me, but I want it to be a race. I want it to be a race. I want him to be like, hey, Dad, did you hear this? And be like, yes, I did. Or I want a challenge between him and me to be, can I stump Dad? Can I figure out a new thing that Dad doesn't know about? And like, what a challenge for him to have to obtain. Now imagine he obtains it at 4. And all of a sudden, Dad's dumbass, and he doesn't know what's going on. Because, Dad, hey, did you hear about the thing? What thing? No, I didn't. I don't care to know. It's like, Well, you think your kid's going to talk to you? I want my kid to come and talk to me and be excited because he heard about a new X-Men show. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I want to come from my child, is a genuine...
Like me.
Exactly, man. My little boy story coming in, tell me how excited he is. But the point is he would never... get that ability to make me, this is the selfish part. He can't make me happy unless I set him up to be a person that can make me happy. It sounds really selfish, but honestly, that's the best kind of selfish I could imagine having with your kid, man.
Yeah, because you're setting your kid up to be in a world where like it's a competition where like you're gonna have to compete, and like if he doesn't or she doesn't have that drive to want to learn and get better, like where's that going to lead them? Like you always need it, because like there's the sense of, like you said, like you want it to be a race stuff. Like there's not a guarantee that your kid off the bat might not be smart because you know what I know.
Yeah.
You might have just had to give birth to a prodigal genius.
Exactly.
You never know. But like you need to be able to help them with schoolwork. And I can tell you right now, when it comes to math, my kid cannot ask me. I can do plus, I can do subtraction. But like after that, forget it. And now the way they're teaching kids with math, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yep.
Like when they get that Common Core thing, which makes no sense to me.
Man.
Their mom knows. Her mom knows. So she's gonna go to her mom. Now when it comes to social studies and all that other stuff, oh hey, I'm there. I can do that.
Yeah, nice.
But like another thing, like I feel bad because I can't help my own kid with math. But you know what? At least she has her mom that has like, if need be, my aunt who's super smart with math and stuff like that. But like, always have that willingness to want to learn and do better. And it's just like, there's no shame in saying, hey, I want to learn to better my child. And then you try to learn, you're like, you know what? I can't do this.
Yep.
I got to admit defeat. But hey, you tried, and that's what's important. And that's what you need to teach your kid, is that no matter what happens, don't just say, I'm done and give up.
Yep.
You got to try.
You get to learn it together. And then how cool is that?
Hopefully learn it together, because your kid might learn, you may not. So you try.
You can try.
That's what's matter.
Yeah. I love it. I'm so excited for that, man.
Yeah, dude. Like it always says, do or do not. There is no try.
No
and
try.
I'm just like,
amen.
I never understood that growing up either. And now I'm just like, you're right. You either do it or you don't. There is no in between.
There's not, man. I'm gonna try. No, you're not. You're either gonna be there or you're not gonna be there. So pick one and go forth, and then accept the choice. Like if you say you're gonna be there and you don't. Admit that you didn't, apologize, and move forward.
Yeah. Now, something may truly happen. We're like, oh, I got in a car accident, my car broke down. Like, hey, I wanted to be there, and I made sure that my time was free. I put in the effort. Something happened, and you can prove it. Okay,
life happens, man.
But don't just say, I'm going to try. No, either yes or no. Don't.
Yeah, dude, I do know.
It's important.
That's why we work so well together. And that's why the Dad's Perspective podcast is coming for your souls. I don't know. That's the best I can come with. But no, the reality is episode 6, man, is wrapping up, and it's beautiful. Okay, we from co-parenting tips, once again, I just always got to give you a little bit of love, man. Keep it up. Keep going. Do what's best for Emma always, and you'll be happier, or she will be happier when the dust settles. Okay, when you're fighting a war, you just fight. That's what it is. And then you know what I mean? For the people listening, and just truly take this stuff to heart. All right. This is just our experiences, 2 very different experiences, but ultimately 2 guys doing the same thing. We're raising kids, trying to set them up for the best possible future that they can have, man. And I hope you guys enjoy it. I mean, I hope you get something from it. If you have questions, if you want to comment, I mean, put it down in the comments.
Tips.
Tips. Tell us your stories, because ultimately we're figuring it out the best we can. And let's all do this together. Let's form a community of support, and let's support each other like a pair of pantyhose, It's good.
Heck yeah.
So, Sora, you got anything else for the people?
The other thing as well, however you found this, just be aware, we now do have a link tree. So Marcus will be putting that in the description as well, so you can listen to us wherever you would like. And at some point, maybe we will have a Twitter or something where people can follow us and kind of help each other, kind of have a mutual meeting spot, you know?
Slowly but surely, we are building
we're getting there.
this. Yeah, man. And I love it. And I just want to thank you, Story, as always. Thank you, people watching, man. If you liked it, make sure you hit like. If you want to see more, I'm getting it. Watch. I'm getting the first try. Okay. If you liked it, make sure you hit like. If you want to see more, hit subscribe. But most importantly, y'all, go raise your kids right. Say bye, Story.
See you later, peeps. Love your faces.
Much love, legends. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.